Hey, what's up guys? My name is Jason Schmaltz and I'm an AMGA Rock Guide apprentice, and today I'm going to start a new series which I'm super pumped about called Gym to Crag Basics. And it's kind of that season where people are starting to get outside, people are making their summer plans. So I want to go over just some of the basics for rock climbing outside for people that are either new to climbing outside, maybe only gone out a couple times, or even people that are seasoned outside who just want to refine a few of their skills. I remember when I first started out climbing outside, after I went about 5 times, I thought I was an expert. And man, I've grown a lot since then, learned a lot of little tricks, and I'm going to share some of those as well. So even though some might be a review for seasoned climbers, also might be some good insight. So today I'm going to spend some time going over the most popular trad anchors that I've seen, some of my personal favorites as well. I'm going to go over some of the strengths and weaknesses of each, where you might want to use them, and then also where you might want to avoid them. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first top rope anchor I want to talk about is the dual quick draw top rope anchor. And this is most common amongst recreational climbers. And so you're going to take 2 quick draws. You want to use the end of the quick draw that's loose to clip on the gear. And normally I try to have the gray carabiner on the loose end. So you use the phrase gray on gear. That's how you can always remember, how you can use to coach your friends. And then you want the gates opposite and opposed, preferably facing out. Now obviously each scenario you'll have to evaluate. You know, if there's a rock right here that might open this gate, you may want to turn it the other way. But you know, all things considered, the textbook answer for this is gates out in this manner. And then you would put the climbing rope through both carabiners like this. And now this would be your top rope where you would be belaying people over and over again. Now, a couple things to note about this system. Again, some of these are style, but I'll explain to you why I use this style. The first thing is that you notice I clip the rappel rings instead of the hangers, and there's a lot of debate on this. The logic I've been given over the years to clip the rappel rings versus the anchors, or versus the hangers, is because if I clip the hangers and then I try to rig a rappel, now I have my rappel going through both the rings, and it'll just so happen that my carabiner will be lined up with the ring as well. So now it's going through my carabiner. And so now, in order for me to clean the anchor, I've got to jiggle it through the rappel, and it just introduces some margin for some more risk than I would rather assume. So positive about this anchor system is that it's quick, the material is simple, and it's easy to take up and put down. One of the more challenging things about it, and the reason why a lot of guys don't use it, is where's the master point? It's hard at first glance to realize if I was going to clip in up here and belay from the top, where would I clip in? The answer to that is that you would clip into both of these carabiners, but now I have to build out a whole system with carabiners on carabiners, and that's really not ideal. So really this anchor system is only useful if you're going to have a bottom managed site, people belaying how you would typically see in a gym. The other disadvantage of this quick draw system is that there's no lockers. So it's fine if I can see these quick draws while I'm belaying, but when these start to get out of sight and I start to have a high traffic, I introduce a lot of risk that these could get twisted around, maybe the gates get misaligned and start opening each other. And if I have no way to verify that, if I can't visually see them, or we're just doing a low number of climbers, that can introduce some risk. So if you're doing a long day, like with some Boy Scouts or something, this probably isn't going to be a good choice for you. Now then, if you're doing a day when you're trying to knock out a bunch of routes, and it's just you and a buddy, or you and a couple buddies, this would probably be a good choice if you're just knocking them out up and down, up and down, up and down, going to the next route. The second anchor system, and probably one of the more popular ones in almost all scenarios, is the single master point anchor system. So with this anchor system, typically you'll build it with a 120 centimeter sling, 2 non-locking carabiners, and then you'll take the sling, try to get the bar tack out of your way by clipping it close to one of the carabiners. And then you will manually equalize it to where you think the load is going to be, and tie an overhand. You can also do a figure 8 here if you'd like. From here, if I was going to set up a top rope, I would get another locking carabiner, equal and opposite opposed, clip both of them in, clip the rope into each carabiner, and lock down those carabiners. And this would be for if I was going to go back down to the ground and manage the site from the bottom, just like you would in the gym. And this anchor system is superior to the last one I presented in the sense that you have more security with the dual locking carabiners on the rope. So even if the rope gets twisted around for people climbing, it is very unlikely that these carabiners will get crossed in a way that they both become unscrewed and then start to try to open. It's okay to have non-lockers up here. This is kind of considered independent from the climbers wandering around. You can try to make these gates facing opposite directions. That's not really a main focus on this style of anchor. I would just say look at what the rock is behind the anchor system or behind the hangers and make a judgment call from there. Another advantage of this system is that you get the security of locking carabiners with the simplicity similar to the last system, and then I only have basically one anchor building material, the 120 centimeter sling, which is pretty common sling in climbing. I'd say anybody that's climbing outside has at least one of these. And then the carabiner makeup is quite simple and it's very obvious where the master point is. So if anybody comes up, and if anybody's climbing and comes up and sees this anchor, they're gonna know exactly where the master point is, okay? So they're gonna know where the safety is. The other advantage of this anchor versus the quick draw system is there's a defined master point that if I want to belay from the top, I can clip in with a clove, lock myself in, and then set up my gree-gree in guide mode. Lock that down, and I can belay directly off the master point. And there's a lot of advantages to this. Number one, I don't have to climb routes twice to clean them if I'm the only one that can set up and take down routes. Number two, I can be above my friends or my clients and take awesome pictures of them while they're climbing. No more am I taking pictures of people's butts, but I'm taking pictures of them making the big move. And I can also coach them and provide them with a lot of security by belaying from the top. They're climbing toward me. As the route gets scarier because they're getting higher, they're getting closer to me. So I can help with that extra security that they might want in that situation. So that's another advantage of having a defined master point like this while you're doing top rope. Once I'm done top roping, this is an easy clean. If I'm gonna rappel from here, I can go ahead and do that or move on to the next route if I wanna stay above. One other thing to note about this system is there's a defined master point, but there's also a second master point called the shelf, which is up here. And if you consider each of these loops independent of each other, which they are, you can grab one strand of each. And if ergonomically it's better for me to belay at this higher shelf, I'll go ahead and grab the rope, clip in my climber here, and it's just a more ergonomic setup sometimes to have the gree-gree higher as I belay my climber up. So that's one thing to consider with this style of anchor versus some of the others, is that you have this higher shelf. If you've been following me on YouTube for a while or Instagram, you probably noticed that I use the skills board in a lot of my videos. I also use it a lot in my training and a lot in my coaching of clients. If you haven't already, I do recommend picking up this device for practicing at home or practicing before you get in the full-on vertical environment. Being able to rehearse these skills and have the muscle memory so that once you get in a more stressful vertical environment, you can perform is a great idea. Right now we have a special with Skills Board. You can check out their website, skillsboard.com, and use the promo code SSE10 to get 10% off. And of course, they're one of my affiliates, so the better they do, the better I do, and more videos I want to do for you guys to learn and enjoy climbing. The last anchor system that I'll highlight on a traditional hanger system is the quad anchor. To build this anchor, you need a triple length or quad length sling, so 180 centimeters or 240 centimeters. You could also use a cordelette. But basically, you're gonna take that sling, fold it in half, pull the ends out like that, and then I try to get the tab to one end. From here, it's just a little easier to manage these strands with a carabiner, so I'll take one of my non-lockers and just do an overhand, down, around, and through. And then come to the other side and same deal. Just come right down from the end, down, around, and through. Okay. And then I can clip those loops. So I have 4 strands right here that are isolated from each anchor point by these overhands. And so what that would enable is if I were to clip at least 2 of them, and this were to fail for some reason, the carabiner will slide down but be stopped by this overhand, okay? So the way that a top rope setup would work with this, and there's a lot of debate on this, I think where I've settled at is if I'm going to do a bottom managed sight, so again, belaying from the bottom like in the gym, I'm going to clip 3 of the 4 of these strands. I'm going to leave one out. It's important to leave one out or else these overhands won't help you. And again, I'm going to do the opposite and opposed lockers. Lock those down. And I have 3 strands that my top rope is going to be resting on. And what this allows is constant equalization or continual equalization between both anchor points. So if the route is winding or people are taking falls that are directional, where they maybe start here and they fall over here, if they come off and the anchor goes like that, it keeps the weight distributed somewhat more evenly between these 2 anchor points than the fixed master point I showed before. So that's one of the advantages of this system versus the other one. Of course, one of the disadvantages, which was the advantage of the other one, is it's a little bit more complex. You know, when somebody gets up here and they look at this anchor, they're not quite sure, if they're a novice climber, where the master point is. I mean, I think they understand they're clipped in here, but they don't understand how it's redundant. So that would be a negative there that you may have to explain to some of your peers if you're trying to build their confidence. The second thing to consider with this anchor system versus the other is you do have a master point that you could clip into if you wanted to belay from the top. So again, I would just clove in similar to how I did with the 120 centimeter sling master point. However, I'm going to be belaying off the same elevation as my cloved master point. There's not a defined higher shelf. So that's something to kind of keep in mind if you're going to stay and manage from a top sight. Now, one thing that I would consider if I was going to have a top managed sight instead of a bottom managed sight, instead of clipping into all 3 strands with my top rope, I would consider clipping into 2 strands like this. Again, if you didn't want to do a clove, you could do a PAS, whatever. Doesn't matter, as long as you're clipped in and locked. And then I had the other 2 strands reserved for my belay device. And this way I have kind of 2 master points. I have 2 worlds going on here. If my follower gets up and wants to hang out, wants to get cloved in as well, and have a lunch break up here, that's fine. But I have 2 separate master points now where I can kind of shift and do whatever I need to do. And I'm a little bit insulated from what the climber's doing. So that's how I would do this and how I do this when I'm managing from the top. The last top rope style anchor I want to highlight is a trad built top rope anchor. And I actually use this quite a bit in guiding. When I'm at a crag and it's crowded, I don't want to be stepping over recreational climbers to have my clients practice skills or to climb. And I should know the crag well enough to be able to know where there's good lines that maybe aren't fully established, but I can build a top rope anchor up there and be out of people's way. And then we have that line to ourselves, and we can either do our coaching or just our adventure stuff without having to worry about holding people up. So I really like to do that. Now, when you're building a top rope anchor that's going to be managed from the bottom, it's important to understand that the risk goes up versus a multi-pitch anchor where we're belaying somebody up and we can watch at all times. Reason why is from the bottom, we can't see what's going on with the anchor. So if someone falls or something happens where trad pieces get moved around, it's not like multi-pitch where we can immediately make the adjustment and fix it. We don't even know that it happened. So we need to place more pieces to account for that risk. So normally when I approach a top rope anchor area, I just start placing pieces. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so you see here, I've placed about 5 pieces now. They're all really good pieces. So the sum of their scores would easily be over 15. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out my video on scoring trad pieces. I'll put a link to it or something like that. So one thing to be mindful of when you're going to build a top rope anchor with trad gear, especially on a non-established route, is the quality of the rock around. It may not be a good idea to use material like Dyneema that could potentially be cut a little bit easier if I'm not watching it. So instead, I would probably use a cordelette. In this case, maybe not. I mean, I might use some Dyneema if I assess it. You know, it's kind of one of those kind of case-by-case things. And there's many ways to join the ends of a cordelette. A lot of people do double fisherman's, but I like to just do a flat overhand, just the same exact knot as you would do while you were rappelling, which is just a well-dressed overhand knot. So no crosses in the knot, and I go ahead and tighten each strand individually. So the way these trad pieces are laid out, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to combine all the trad pieces in 5 individual strands coming down to a master point. There's multiple strategies to try to eliminate those strands or build maybe 2 individual anchor systems. But the practice I like to do is figure out which one of these can I combine to make one piece. And so you want to look at the level of the carabiners, and you can see that these 2 carabiners are kind of at the same level. So I may combine those 2 into basically one equivalent piece and call that, you know, my middle piece. And I'll go ahead and clove that area as well to lock my tab in place. And then from there I can spread the cordelette around to the other pieces, including the green piece. And now pull these equalization strands in. And you can see, even though I have 5 pieces, I only have 4 strands coming down to my master point. So I can equalize that and then do my overhand. And there's my master point. From here, I would combine 2 carabiners opposite and opposed. In this manner, put my rope through, lock both, and then I'm off to the races. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video on learning different types of top rope anchors for climbing outside. I remember the first time I climbed top rope outside, it just opened a whole new world of possibilities of exploring the outdoors and climbing. So I hope that you're able to share that with your friends, and we'll see you out at the CRAG.